Hello everyone, I'm Christina of CSLdesigns, and today I'm going to show you how to make these chain links. So they're completely handmade and this is what they look like. You can see here, this is the individual links, and I've just then attached them with wrapped loop links with beads just to kind of break them up a bit and add a bit of colour. But it's these links that we're going to be focusing on. So they give a really nice kind of intertwining, curvy look, and they remind me a bit about leaves, I think. Just kind of the feel of them, and it's a bit autumn-like. So this is what the links look like, and obviously you can attach them together however you want to. If you want to make a chain or use them on their own, that's completely up to you. And I then turned my chain here into a bracelet. I thought that would give a really nice look on the wrist. You can see they're quite nice and delicate, those little leafy chain links that we're making. And then also I just broke them up with that colour just to add a bit of interest to them. But like I said, you can use your links for whatever you want to. So if you want to learn how to make them, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we're going to need. The wire that I'm using is this 0.8mm regular round copper wire. Obviously you can use whatever you want to. And then I'm using these 6mm rounds to add a bit of colour between the links. So the specific ones I'm using are these dyed agate gemstone rounds, but obviously you can use whatever you want to. Or you could also choose to not use beads and just use the links for whatever you would like. And obviously for that we're only going to need the wire itself. So let's get it ready and let's get started. So to make one link we're going to need two lengths of our wire here, of about 15 centimeters each. Now we're going to start out using them separately, and then when we put them together that's going to then create the link. So we're just going to start with one of the lengths here, because we then need to kind of prepare them both and get them to the same point. So what I'm going to do is take my chain nose pliers and get to about the middle of the wire. I then need to put a bend in. So just a straight angle like that. And then I take my 6-step bell making pliers because I need to make a loop now. You can use round nose pliers. I just prefer using these because then you get the same size loop every time. Whereas obviously the round nose pliers are tapered. But if you only have them, that's absolutely fine. Then place that right above that bend and take the tail all the way around. I'm just using the smallest size of my pliers here. So we then get a full circle like that. Then again I take my chain nose and put that on top of that circle to grab hold of it so it keeps its shape, while we then take the rest of the tail here and start wrapping it around just below the circle. We just need to wrap it one full time, just the once, so it comes back out to the same side where we just took it from. And then I just smooth it out here, because what we then need to also do is start getting some curves into these two tails that we have now with the little loop there. So now that we made the loop and we have the one wire there, the one tail coming out and kind of creating this curve in this direction, then I just need to take my chain nose again, because we need to bend the other one that's just coming straight down. We need this also to go out to the side, so I'm just going to grab it right where I can get to, right below the wrap that we did, and then bend it outward in the same direction as the other one. So they end up something like that. And now I also want to put a curve into this, and I just use my finger, kind of warm up the wire and get the curve in the direction that I want it to go. And then we need to start adjusting the size and the shape of these. Now it's when you're doing these curves here that really determines how large your link is going to be as well. So you can choose to make it quite small or quite large or somewhere in between. I kind of like the in between a little bit. But then you bring this further in, and then this goes closer as well. And then what we need to do is make sure that on this side the two tails of the wire, they meet up and lie right next to each other again, kind of just like how they start out over here. And you can always adjust this. And also a tip is, when you've done one link already, you can use that link to then kind of measure this against to make sure they get as even as possible. Obviously they might not be completely the same, but that's fine because it's handmade. But just kind of use that to get the sizing more right. And also, we're making this with the other length of wire that we cut off. We need to do this exact same thing, so you can just use this first one to also measure that one against, to make sure that within the same length they obviously need to get as even as possible as well. So you just get both of your lengths here in this direction with the curve, and then just make sure the two tails come lying flat next to each other, right next to each other as close as possible, down in this direction again. So this is kind of the curves on one side. And then now we need to take the other length of wire here that we cut ready and do the exact same thing again. So that's why I said you can just take the one you just made and measure against that when you're making these curves on the side. So when you have these two ready, it's then also time to put them together. So now I made both halves here, then they look like that. Then what we need to do is start putting them together. So how they're going to end up sitting is, what I also just want to make sure to do is, there's kind of a front and a back to this. So I'm making sure the two fronts are always facing in the same direction. So they're going to end up being the front. So what we need to do is kind of interlock these. And the way we do that is we need the tails of the opposite one to go over the top of right below where, on the side where the loop is. So basically we just kind of interlock them like this. And obviously it's loose for now, so we're going to need to kind of hold on to it while we're attaching them together. But you can kind of get the impression of what it's going to look like. And you can see by obviously making them as similar in size as possible, they're going to fit together nicely. If you make them too different in size, they obviously won't really fit. So that's why using one to kind of make the other, measuring against it, is really beneficial. So kind of just place them where you want them to sit, so how the final link is going to look. Then we need to start bending these tails around the back. And to do that, I'm going to take my chain nose pliers again. I'm holding on to it, like I said, because obviously otherwise it's just moving around here. Then I need to place my pliers. I'm just going to work on these tails first. I'm just going to go in and grab onto them, not the wire that's underneath there, but just get in so I can grab onto those two, but just in the right position, because I want to grab where, when I bend these wires back, they're basically going to end up bending around the outside edge of the one below. So I just want to make sure that I grab onto the right place. Something a bit like that. So I'm grabbing hold of that nicely, and also make sure it's kind of a bit at an angle and it's not straight across like that. Then I'm going to grab hold of this and start bending these tails back on themselves around the back of the pliers. So you can see there. So they're coming around the back there. Now I just want to bring them down a little bit because I want these wires to end up going right behind where the curves are. So I just need to bring them down in this direction. And then that's the one of them. You can always double check. Put them together again. Interlock them. Just double check if you're happy with how that's going to sit. Because rather kind of fix things along the way if you need to, than obviously not being quite happy when it's done, because then it'll be too late. So that bend is going to sit just there below that wrap we did below the loop on that side and fit nicely. Now I'm going to flip this around to the other side because we need to do the exact same there. Make sure to kind of grab hold of where they're sitting on the side we just bent. Then take my pliers here and just do the exact same thing. Grab hold of where you want that bend to be. Again, so they get as symmetrical as possible and even sized on both ends and sides. I just sometimes like to kind of take my finger away just to double check that it's still sitting and proportioned how I want it to. And then I can just remove this, get it out of the way, while I then bend these back. So there we go. I'm going to bring them down so they sit nicely. And now they're both kind of bent back like this so they can interlock a bit more. But obviously they're still loose, so we now need to fully connect them so they're nice and secure and become one complete link. So to then fasten them together, what we're going to do first of all is just obviously actually intertwine them. So just put one through the other. And then making sure that the tails there go over the wire by the end where it's making the loop. That's how we want them to sit. And now to fasten them, I'm going to go to the back. And again, just hold on to it because it's still going to be moving around. And just make sure to try and hold it in place here. Because what we first of all need to do is get rid of the excess wire. So again, it can be a bit fiddly because it wants to keep kind of moving around. Just find the best way that you can to hold on to it so it stays in place as much as possible. Then, when I'm happy with that, I'm going to take my flush cutters and we need to cut off the excess. Now we need to leave about 1 millimeter or 2 after you can see the wire that's crossing underneath there, so the wire is sticking out just a little bit above. So I'm going to cut it off just right around there, and we'll say rather cut off too little, so the 2 long lengths left, because you can always cut off a bit more if you need to, if you find out that they're just a bit too long, but obviously you can't add any more. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side, just so that's ready as well. So all we got to do is attach them. So find the place where you want to cut them, like that, and then almost there, but we obviously need to just make it so the wires actually grab on, because right now they're just straight. So I'm going to take my chain nose pliers for that and just take one at a time, and then right on the end of these short ends that we have left, which is why we need to leave 1 millimeter or 2, I'm going to grab onto them with the chain nose and then bend them inwards towards the piece there. You can see they go inwards like that. And then what I also just want to do while we're at it, I'm just going to open it up a little bit so we can actually get them intertwined again, because otherwise it can be a bit difficult. Do the same with the other one. Just bend the ends inwards, because that's how they're going to grab on. And then we just need to open it up a bit. I'm going to then re-intertwine them. So get them sitting properly. So as you can see, if you didn't open them up, they kind of wouldn't really go back together. That one side and then the other side. Get that over right underneath the loop. And you can see there. All we need to do now is kind of flatten it down, because we already made that bend. So that means I can take my chain nose and actually just go in and then squeeze them down. Do one end at a time. And you can really then make sure as well to do the ends there. You kind of tighten them around the wire that's going through. Now just kind of do a bit at a time. Go to the other side, because obviously it's still a bit loose, so make sure to fasten it so it becomes easier to work with, and you can always then keep adjusting it. Tighten up the wires around the ends. Now it is attached now, it's not going to come undone, but it's still a bit loose in this case. So what I can see is that I have left the tails a bit too long. So all that means is I'm going to go in and cut off a bit more. So like I said, I'd rather do that than have left them too short. So cut off equal in both. And then go in and tighten them again. Because it's really getting them tight around the wire that's going through there that's going to hold it in place nicely. And also just going from this side, so the actual ends that we bent are really grabbing around the wire. That's something a bit like that. That end is much tighter now. And you can just do the same with the other one if you need to. I also think I just need to cut off a little bit more from that. So again, when you then cut off a bit more if you need to, just do a tiny little bit at a time, because like I said, you can always do a bit more and a bit more if you need to. Just so you don't risk cutting off too much, and then obviously it's kind of no way back. And just tighten this down again. So both ends are going to be nice and tight. and none of this link is going to be loose, because obviously we don't want that. It needs to be nice and strong as we're making it into a chain or whatever we're using it for. Tighten the ends down and around, and then something like that. So this is now much tighter, and this won't really move anymore. Obviously you can force it to if you really put force into it, but you wouldn't want to do that with jewelry anyway. Last thing I just want to do is, if you have a little look on yours, sometimes you might be able to see the very end of the wire there kind of sticking through on both ends. What I just want to make sure to do to kind of hide that is place these wires, the very ends, so they basically end up sitting right behind themselves. So that one goes behind that one and the other one goes behind the other one, because that way if you do that, then you won't be able to see them from the front, and they'll be more secure as well. But then here's your final link. So that's what it looks like. You can see it's almost like a little leaf shape like that. So that's how you make it. All you got to do now is put them together with jump rings or with beads or with other links, and you can make your own chain. But otherwise, this is then what the links look like. So what I also just want to mention is that there is a front and a back to them. So this is the front, because you can see the wire is wrapping over there and then going towards the back, because on the back is where we finished it off and kind of squeezed it together there and wrapped them around the little ends. So you just want to make sure that when you attach them together, however you do it, that you always have the front there facing in the same direction, and the same with the back, just to keep it nice and even. So that's what it looks like. And then I turned this into a bracelet, so I attached my clasp on one end and then just my extended chain on the other end. So there you go. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Now I have loads of other tutorials on my channel, and I also have several where I show different types of links to make chain with, if you like making your own chain. So please feel free to check that out. There's going to be a playlist as well. So otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this one, and thank you very much for watching.